there's a lot of other interesting things that we can do in C with respect to files and characters. For example, we might want to be able to count the number of words or the number of characters or the number of lines in a file. So as opposed to these short pieces of code that I have, let's grab a somewhat more interesting file, which I have placed out at a website. So type wget www.surromatix.com/uploads/voyage.txt. This is the text of the book Voyage of the Beagle by Darwin. Okay, we finished that, and we can say wc, which is a built-in Linux command. wc gives us a bunch of information about voyage.txt, namely that it contains 21,905 lines, this many words, and this many characters. We can separate these out as follows. The -w command gives me the number of words. The -c gives me the number of characters. And -l gives me the number of lines. Well, let's write code to do this. So let's copy lower 1.c to count c.c, which will be for counting characters. We'll edit the file. We're going to use the same program stub as before. We will need a new variable, nc, which will keep track of the number of characters, and we'll initialize it to 0. So we're doing something a little more complex here. We're actually on the same line declaring two integer variables, ch for the character and nc for the number of characters, but we're also initializing the nc variable at the same time to 0. Okay, so what do we have to do? Well, every single time we read a character, we simply want to increment the counter by 1. And at the end, when we're all done and we've reached the end of file, we want to print this out. Okay, I'm now introducing one of the most important built-in commands into C called the printf statement. This will allow us to send arbitrary strings of information to the standard output. This is, in my opinion, one of the most important statements because you can use this to debug everything in your code. You can print out the values of all your variables while the code is running. It is the best way to debug your code. I've been doing it for 29 years. There are more sophisticated versions and more sophisticated ways of doing things, but frankly, I think this is the simplest and the best. So we can type in arbitrary strings that we want to come out, number of characters. Now I'm going to do something interesting, %d and \n. Okay, you will recognize the \n as a new line. The %d indicates that we want to print the value of some variable here. The d means that it's an integer variable, and the integer variable that we want to print out is nc. I'll talk more about printf in later lectures because when we want to have other types of variables that are not just ints, we will have different expressions here. There'll still be %, but there'll be other value, other letters, %f, %u, %d, and so on and so forth. Okay, let's try this out. Okay, A dot out, Voyage of the Beagle. Number of characters, 123,000, or sorry, that's 1,233,699. And that agrees exactly with the built-in Linux command. So let's stop this lecture here, and we'll continue in the next lecture by counting the number of lines.